The bell above the door jingled as Alina stepped into the sun-drenched bank, the familiar weight of anticipation settling in her stomach. She paused, allowing her eyes to adjust to the relatively dim interior. The muted tones of the walls, the polished wood of the counters, and the faint smell of old paper and leather were comforting. It was a small-town bank in Kansas, the kind where everyone knew each other, or at least they thought they did. "Good morning," chirped the bank teller at the front, a woman with tightly pulled hair and a name tag that read Karen. Her smile was wide but lacked warmth, the kind that felt rehearsed. "What can I do for you today?" "Hi, I'd like to make a withdrawal," Alina replied, her voice steady despite the flutter of nerves in her chest. She reached into her purse, fingers brushing against the cool, smooth surfaces of her belongings. "I just need to get my ID." "Sure thing. Just need to see your identification," Karen replied, her tone a mix of impatience and feigned cheerfulness. Alina squinted, her vision blurring slightly as she rummaged through the depths of her purse. The bank's fluorescent lights flickered above her, casting sharp shadows that danced across the counter. "Just a moment," she said, her voice rising slightly in frustration. It always took longer to find things when her eyes played tricks on her. "Ma'am, if you could hurry it up," Karen said, her smile faltering. "We have a line." Alina's heart sank. She could feel the gazes of the other customers weighing down on her, their impatience palpable, even from the periphery of her vision. "I'm sorry, Honestly," Karen interrupted, crossing her arms and leaning back in her chair. "You're taking too long. Maybe you shouldn't be here." "What do you mean?" Alina's voice caught in her throat, each word a struggle against the rising tide of mortification. Karen leaned forward, her tone dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that felt like a slap. "You're not the correct color for this place." Alina blinked, her stomach twisting. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Karen said, her smirk returning. "You don't fit in here. You should go back where you came from." The world around Alina narrowed to a single point. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the counter, her fingers digging into the polished wood. "I just want to take out some money. I'm a customer like everyone else." Karen shrugged, her expression unyielding. "I can't help you if you can't find your ID. If you're not going to comply, I'll have to call security." "Call whoever you want," Alina managed to say, her voice cracking under the strain. "I'm not leaving without my money." A heavy silence descended, thick with tension. Alina could feel the eyes of the other customers now, flicking between her and Karen, their judgment palpable. Just then, the door swung open, and a familiar figure stepped inside, Officer James Riley, his uniform crisp and his posture relaxed. He had always been kind to her during his rounds in the neighborhood. "Everything all right here?" he asked, his gaze scanning the room before landing on Alina. "Not really," Alina said, her voice a mixture of relief and desperation. "I'm just trying to make a withdrawal." Karen scoffed. "This woman can't even find her ID. I'm not serving her." "Ma'am, is that true?" Officer Riley asked, his tone gentle as he stepped closer, a shield against the hostility of the bank teller. "I'm visually impaired," Alina said, frustration spilling over. "I just need a moment to locate my ID." Officer Riley nodded, his expression softening. "That's okay. Take your time. No rush here." "See?" Alina shot back at Karen, her pulse racing. "I'm a customer. I have every right to be here." Karen's cheeks flushed, anger darkening her features. "You're wasting everyone's time. This isn't a charity." The officer's brows knitted together. "That's not how we treat customers, ma'am. Everyone deserves respect in this establishment." "Respect?" Karen spat, throwing her hands up. "She's not even capable of getting her own identification." "Stop." Alina's voice was low and fierce, cutting through the tension. "I'm capable enough to know when I'm being discriminated against." James stepped back, assessing the situation. "Let's take a breath, everyone. Alina, why don't you tell me what you need?" "I just need my money," Alina said, her voice steadier now. "I have an account here, and I'm not leaving until I get it." "All right, let's make that happen," he said, turning back to Karen, who was seething. "You're going to assist her, and we'll resolve this matter appropriately." Karen opened her mouth to protest, but the look in James's eyes silenced her. Alina could see the battle waging behind that forced smile, the fear of consequences mingling with her prejudice. "Fine," Karen finally said, her voice brittle. "But I'm only doing this because the officer is here." "Whatever you need to tell yourself," Alina said, her heart racing. She could feel the tide of the situation shifting, the power dynamics ebbing away from the teller and toward her. "Let's get this done," James said, stepping aside to give Alina space. "You've got this." With renewed determination, Alina sifted through her purse again, hands moving with purpose. She could almost hear the clock ticking, the seconds stretching into minutes as she fought against the weight of Karen's disdain. "Here," Alina finally exclaimed, pulling out her ID. "I found it." The teller snatched the card from her fingers, scrutinizing it under the light as if looking for flaws. "This better be valid." "Of course it is," Alina replied, her voice laced with defiance. As Karen processed the withdrawal, Alina caught a glimpse of her reflection in the glass behind the teller. She saw the fear, the confusion, and the anger swirling within her, but also the glimmer of resilience. She was not going to let this moment define her. The silence in the bank was almost oppressive, broken only by the sound of keys clicking and the soft rustle of paper. "Here's your cash," Karen said. Her tone clipped as she slid the money across the counter. "Thank you," Alina said, forcing a smile as she took the bills. "You've been very helpful." James offered her an encouraging nod, a reminder that not everyone shared Karen's perspective. "You did great, Alina. Don't let anyone make you feel small." Alina took a deep breath, the weight of the confrontation lifting slightly. "I won't," she said, her voice stronger now, filled with an unshakable resolve. "I refuse to be silenced." As she turned to leave, the bell above the door chimed once more, and Alina stepped out into the bright sunlight, the warmth washing over her. She could feel the tension of the bank dissipating, replaced by the soft rustle of the wind and the distant sounds of life in the small town. But she knew this wasn't over. The world outside was full of prejudices, and she had just scratched the surface. "Hey, Alina," James called after her, his voice following her like a comforting breeze. "You've got a right to be here. Don't forget that." "I won't," she called back, her heart swelling with determination. "And I'll make sure others know it too." As she walked away, Alina felt a fire igniting within her, a fierce desire to stand up against the shadows of discrimination. This was just the beginning. Officer James Riley parked his cruiser just outside the large glass doors of the bank, the faint hum of the city buzzing around him. He stepped out, adjusting his belt as he walked toward the entrance, his mind already on the usual disturbances, perhaps a minor scuffle or a misplaced wallet. The sun cast long shadows on the pavement, hinting at the early evening that was fast approaching. As he entered, a wave of tension hit him like a blast of cold air. The interior was sterile and bright, but the atmosphere felt thick, electric with discomfort. A few customers shuffled awkwardly, casting furtive glances toward the desk where a teller stood with crossed arms, a smug expression plastered on her face. "Excuse me, what seems to be the problem here?" he asked, his voice steady, projecting authority. The teller shifted her gaze from the screen to Officer Riley, her lips pursing slightly. "We have a situation." "Alina," a voice broke through the ambient noise. It was a woman, her tone sharp and filled with indignation. Riley turned to see a young woman standing near the entrance, her posture rigid, a storm brewing in her dark eyes. "Can you please tell him what happened? I can't believe they're treating you like this." Alina's composure was striking against the backdrop of hostility. She took a breath, her voice steady yet strained. "I came in to retrieve some cash, but they said my identification wasn't valid. Because it's expired," the teller interrupted, her voice dripping with disdain. "You should have known better than to come here without proper ID." Alina's face flushed, but she held her ground. "I was just trying to get my money, not cause a scene." "I didn't think. Maybe you should think next time," the teller snapped, flicking her hair back with a flourish. Officer Riley felt a surge of frustration. "Ma'am, may I have a word with you?" The teller rolled her eyes but stepped closer, gritting her teeth as she approached him. "What's there to discuss? She's clearly out of order." "No, what's out of order is how you're treating her," he replied, locking eyes with the teller. "This isn't just about the identification. It's about respect," the teller huffed, crossing her arms tighter. "I'm just following protocol." "Protocol?" Riley's tone sharpened. "Is it protocol to humiliate someone in front of a crowd? Because it seems to me that you're mistaking your authority for a right to belittle others." The indifference in the bank staff was palpable, a collective avoidance of the issue. Riley turned back to Alina, who stood tall despite the tumult of emotions swirling inside her. "Alina, I want you to tell me exactly what happened." She nodded, her voice trembling yet resolute. "I was simply trying to withdraw money, but they refused me service because of my old ID. I never meant to cause trouble. And then they called you a nuisance." The woman who had spoken earlier chimed in, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "It's not right." Riley could see the weight of the situation pressing down on Alina. "You didn't do anything wrong." The bank has a responsibility to treat all customers with respect, regardless of the situation. The teller scoffed, but Riley ignored her. Let's take this somewhere quieter. How about we step outside? As they moved toward the exit, Alina's eyes glimmered with gratitude. Thank you, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the ambient noise. Once outside, the air felt fresher, the tension lifting slightly. Riley gestured toward his cruiser. Do you need a ride to the police station? We can sort this out there. Really? Alina's eyes widened, a flicker of hope breaking through her earlier despair. You do that for me? Of course, he replied, opening the passenger door for her. I'm not going to let them treat you like that and walk away. As she slid into the seat, Alina took a deep breath, the weight of the situation still heavy on her shoulders, but the promise of support offering a glimmer of reprieve. I appreciate it. I really do. Riley climbed into the driver's seat, the engine rumbling to life as he pulled into traffic. Let's get you that replacement ID. You shouldn't have to face this kind of treatment again. Alina stared out the window, watching the bustling streets of the city pass by. I've had a rough time lately. It feels like no one is on my side. You'd be surprised, he said, keeping his eyes on the road but glancing at her briefly. Most people want to help, they just don't know how. She turned to look at him, a hint of a smile breaking through her earlier gloom. You're doing it. You're helping. I'm just doing my job, Riley replied, a modest shrug accompanying his words. But it's more than just a job when you see someone being treated unfairly. It becomes personal. The police station loomed ahead, a solid building that represented authority and protection. As they parked, Alina's breath hitched, a mix of anxiety and anticipation flooding her senses. Are you okay? Riley asked, noticing her hesitation. I didn't expect any of this. I thought I'd be in and out of the bank without a problem. Sometimes problems find us when we least expect it, he said gently. But it's how we deal with them that counts. Once inside, the fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow on the walls, but the atmosphere was less charged than the bank. Officers moved about, exchanging casual banter, their camaraderie a stark contrast to the indifference Alina had faced. Here we are, Riley said, leading her to the front desk where an officer was typing away. This is Officer Daniels. He'll help you with the ID process. Hey, James, Daniels greeted with a nod, his eyes flickering to Alina. What's going on? This is Alina, Riley introduced. She needs a replacement ID, ran into some trouble at the bank. Daniel's expression shifted from casual to concerned, his demeanor instantly more professional. I'm sorry to hear that. Let's get you sorted out. Alina felt a rush of relief as Officer Daniels began the process, his tone warm and inviting. Do you have any other forms of identification? Anything with your name on it? I have a passport, but it's also expired, she admitted, a touch of embarrassment creeping into her voice. Not a problem, he assured her. We'll work with what we've got. Let's take a picture, and we can issue a temporary ID while we sort out the details. As Alina posed for the photo, Riley couldn't help but smile at her determination. She stood tall, her chin lifted slightly, as if she were reclaiming her power. See? You're doing great, he encouraged. Thanks, she replied, her voice steadier now. I didn't think I'd feel this supported today. Support is what it's all about, he said, leaning against the wall, arms crossed as he watched the process unfold. You deserve to be treated with dignity. Once the paperwork was completed, Officer Daniels handed Alina a temporary ID. This should help you out until we can get your official one sorted. If anyone gives you trouble, just show them this. Thank you so much, Alina said, her eyes shining with appreciation. I can't believe how different this feels from the bank. Riley stepped forward, his gaze sincere. Remember, not everyone is like that teller. There are people who care, who want to help. Don't lose sight of that. As they exited the station, Alina felt lighter, a burden lifted from her shoulders. I really appreciate everything you've done for me. You didn't have to get involved. Maybe not, but I'm glad I did, he replied, the hint of a smile on his lips. You've shown a lot of strength today. Don't underestimate it. Do you think things will change? Alina asked, a note of uncertainty creeping in. I believe they can, he answered earnestly. Empathy can be a powerful catalyst for change. You just have to keep pushing for it. Their conversation left Alina feeling hopeful, a spark igniting within her. I'll remember that. I've got to keep fighting. As they reached the cruiser, a distant siren wailed, echoing through the streets. The sound resonated with both urgency and determination, a reminder that there were still battles to be fought, but with allies beside her. Alina felt ready for whatever came next. "I'll always be here to help," Riley said, as he opened the door for her once more. "Let's turn this experience into something positive." As they drove off, Alina gazed out at the city, the sun setting behind the skyline, casting a warm glow over everything. It felt like a new beginning. "Thank you, Officer Riley," she said softly, her heart swelling with gratitude. "For believing in me, always," he replied, his eyes on the road, but his voice filled with warmth. And in that moment, amid the chaos of the world, both felt the transformative power of empathy, weaving a thread of connection between them, a promise that no one had to face their struggles alone. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot as Officer James Riley parked his cruiser outside the bank. Alina sat beside him, her heart racing, a mixture of anxiety and anticipation coursing through her veins. Just moments ago, she had been dismissed and belittled by the very people meant to assist her, and now, with Riley's presence, she felt a flicker of hope. "Are you ready for this?" Riley asked, his voice steady, though his brow furrowed with determination. Alina nodded, her grip tightening around her purse. "I have to be. I deserve to be treated with respect." "Exactly," he affirmed, stepping out of the vehicle and surveying the bank's entrance. "Let's go." As they walked toward the glass doors, Alina felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. Memories of the earlier confrontation swirled in her mind, the stifled laughter, the condescending tone of the teller. She had entered the bank as a customer, but their treatment had made her feel like an outsider. Now, with Riley at her side, she felt a surge of empowerment. The moment they stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted. The bank's sterile interior, with its dull gray carpets and fluorescent lights, felt almost suffocating. The tellers exchanged wary glances, and Alina saw the manager, a balding man in a crisp suit, hastily straighten his tie as he caught sight of them. "Officer Riley," the manager greeted, his voice a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Let's not waste time," Riley said, his tone leaving no room for pleasantries. He turned to Alina, his focus unwavering. "Go ahead, you know what you need to do." Alina approached the counter, her steps tentative, but resolute. The same teller who had treated her with disdain earlier stood before her, a look of dread creeping across her face. Can I help you?" she stammered, an edge of panic in her voice. "Actually, you can. I'd like to withdraw my funds," Alina said, forcing herself to maintain eye contact. "And I expect an apology for the way I was treated." The teller's expression faltered, and she opened her mouth to respond, but Riley stepped forward, his presence looming. "She asked for an apology," he stated firmly, "and I'm here to ensure she gets it." The manager cleared his throat, stepping between Alina and the teller, a nervous sweat glistening on his forehead. Of course. We can resolve this. Let's not escalate things." Alina felt a rush of validation. "This isn't just about me. It's about how you treat your customers," she pointed out, her voice gaining strength. "I'm not the first person you've dismissed, and I won't be the last if things don't change." The manager's eyes darted between her and Riley, the pressure mounting. "I assure you, we take this very seriously. I'll address it with the staff immediately." "Immediately?" Alina challenged, her heart pounding. "You need to hold them accountable now. Otherwise, this will continue." Riley stepped closer, arms crossed, his gaze unwavering. "You know, I could file a complaint against this institution for discrimination. That would definitely get some attention." The teller's face blanched, her hands trembling slightly as she glanced at the manager. "I didn't mean to. I was just what?" Riley interrupted, his voice rising slightly. "Just doing your job? Because it looks like you were doing something else entirely." Alina could see the teller's resolve crumbling, her bravado evaporating in the face of Riley's authority. I'm sorry," she stuttered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to offend you. I just what?" Riley pressed, his frustration evident. "You didn't think she deserved respect? You didn't think she had a right to her money?" "No, that's not it," the teller pleaded, her eyes wide with fear. I was having a bad day." "Bad day or not, that's not an excuse to take it out on a customer," Alina said, her voice steady. "I'm not asking for much, just a simple acknowledgement that I deserve the same treatment as anyone else." The bank manager shifted uncomfortably, glancing toward the lobby where other customers were beginning to take notice. "Please, let's all just take a breath," he said, attempting to regain control of the situation. "I will personally ensure that this is dealt with. This is not how we operate." Alina raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "And how do you operate?" Because from where I stand, it looks like you let your staff bully customers. Alina, enough, Riley said, his voice soothing but firm. We're here for you, and I'll make sure they know that this isn't acceptable. The teller took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just what? Alina prompted again, her resolve softening slightly. Just felt superior. No, I was overwhelmed, the teller admitted, her voice cracking. I've been under a lot of pressure lately. Pressure? Riley echoed incredulously. Does that justify treating someone poorly? You think Alina is the first person you've dismissed? You're in a service position. Your job is to help people, not make them feel inferior. I'm sorry, the teller repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm really, really sorry. Alina watched the woman's shoulders slump, the fight leaving her. I appreciate the apology, but it needs to come from the top down, Alina said, her voice steadying. You need to hold your staff accountable. It's the only way things will change. The bank manager nodded, though uncertainty lingered in his eyes. I will conduct a meeting first thing in the morning. We will address this, and I promise to take proper action. And what about now? Riley asked, his tone uncompromising. This isn't just about future changes. It's about right now. Alina felt a surge of adrenaline. I want a formal apology. I want it documented that what happened to me is unacceptable. I deserve that. The manager hesitated, glancing nervously at the teller, who was now biting her lip, tears threatening to spill. Of course, we can arrange that. Good, Alina said, her heart pounding with a mixture of satisfaction and lingering anger. And I'll be sure to follow up, because if I don't see change, I'll be back. Alina, let's not make threats, Riley cautioned, though a hint of pride flickered in his eyes. You're standing up for yourself, and that's what matters. But she should know that this isn't over, Alina insisted, looking back at the teller. You need to understand the impact of your actions. I do, the teller said, her voice breaking. I'm sorry. I really am. I'll do better. Riley stepped forward, his hand resting gently on Alina's shoulder. You're doing great, Alina. Just remember, change takes time. Accountability starts here, but it needs to be ongoing. Alina nodded, feeling both empowered and vulnerable. I just want to be treated like anyone else. I want to be seen. And you will be, the manager said, his tone more resolute. I will ensure this is addressed, and we will have a meeting to discuss how we can better serve all our customers. As Alina stepped back, she glanced at Riley, who smiled back at her, pride shining in his eyes. You did it. Not just me, she replied, her heart swelling with a sense of unity. This is about all of us. Riley turned his attention back to the manager. I expect to see changes implemented. Alina deserves to feel safe and valued here. Yes, of course, the manager stammered, his eyes darting nervously. I'll take immediate action. Alina turned to the teller one last time, her expression softening. I hope you really mean it. It's not just about today, it's about every day after this. I do, the teller whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I'll do better. I promise. With a final nod, Alina turned to leave, her heart racing but filled with newfound strength. As she stepped outside into the evening air, she felt a sense of liberation. Riley followed closely behind, a protective presence that grounded her. Thank you, she said, glancing up at him. I couldn't have done it without you. It was all you, he replied, a proud smile creeping onto his face. You found your voice. I just hope it makes a difference, she replied, looking back at the bank, her heart still racing. It will, Riley assured her. You've started a conversation. And every conversation is a step toward change. As they walked back to the cruiser, Alina felt the weight of the world lifting off her shoulders. She had stood up for herself, and in doing so, she had ignited a spark that could lead to something greater. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to face it head-on. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a warm golden hue across the bustling city streets. Alina stood outside the bank, her heart racing as she watched the world move around her. The incident had changed everything, and she felt its ripples in every breath she took. She had spent countless hours reflecting on that day, the moment when her dignity was stripped away in an instant. But now, as she gazed upon the building that had caused her so much pain, she felt a sense of triumph bubbling within her. Hey, Alina, a voice called, snapping her from her reverie. It was Maya, her best friend, rushing toward her, her dark curls bouncing with each step. Did you see the news? You're everywhere. Alina chuckled softly, glancing down at her phone, which buzzed incessantly with notifications. I think I might need to hire a PR team at this rate. Maya laughed, the sound light and infectious. You deserve it. I mean, look at what you've done. You turned a personal nightmare into a call for change. It's incredible. Alina shrugged, trying to downplay her impact, but the warmth of gratitude washed over her. I didn't do it alone. Officer Riley was there for me when I needed it. Just then, Alina spotted him across the street, standing beside a group of reporters. Officer James Riley, now a local hero, was engaged in animated conversation, his face a mix of humility and determination. The officer's actions had resonated beyond their small encounter. They had sparked a movement. Alina smiled, remembering the way he had stood by her, believing her when no one else did. Come on, let's go say hi, Maya urged, tugging Alina's arm. They weaved through the crowd, excitement buzzing in the air. As they approached, Alina could hear snippets of the conversation. And this isn't just about one incident, Officer Riley was saying, his voice steady and passionate. We need to confront the systemic issues that allow discrimination to persist. We can't turn a blind eye anymore. Alina's heart swelled with pride. She stepped closer, catching his eye. Riley's expression brightened, and he excused himself from the group, striding toward her. Alina, I'm so glad to see you. Hi, Officer Riley, she said, her voice soft but filled with warmth. I've been following everything. You've become quite the celebrity. He chuckled, a hint of embarrassment coloring his cheeks. I don't know about that. I was just doing my job. More than that, Maya interjected, nudging Alina playfully. You're a symbol of hope now. Riley shrugged, looking slightly uncomfortable with the praise. I just hope it leads to real change. We need to keep pushing for accountability. Alina nodded, her resolve solidifying. And I'll help. I want to share my story, to keep the conversation going. That's the spirit. Riley's eyes lit up. Let's get together and plan something. Maybe a community forum? We can invite local leaders and activists to discuss these issues. Maya beamed, her enthusiasm infectious. I'd love to help organize it. This is our chance to make a difference. As they brainstormed ideas, Alina felt a sense of purpose she hadn't experienced before. The chaos of the past few weeks had transformed into something hopeful, something that could inspire others. The air buzzed with possibilities, each suggestion filled with the potential for change. Days turned into weeks, and with each meeting, the momentum grew. Alina and Officer Riley found themselves working closely together, crafting a narrative that would resonate with their community. They gathered stories from others who had faced discrimination, amplifying voices that had long been silenced. One evening, as they sat in a small cafe, Riley leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowed in thought. Do you think we can really make a difference, Alina? She looked at him, her heart swelling with admiration. We already are. Just by having these conversations, we're breaking down walls. People are listening now. He nodded, a slow smile spreading across his face. You've got an incredible way of seeing the world, you know that? Alina felt her cheeks warm. I've had to learn, but I couldn't have done it without you. Their gazes locked, and in that moment Alina felt a connection deeper than friendship. It was the spark of camaraderie forged in shared experiences and a mutual commitment to change. Just then, Riley's phone buzzed, breaking the moment. He glanced at the screen, sighing. Looks like I'm needed back at the station, he said, standing up and adjusting his uniform. But let's meet tomorrow to finalize the details for the forum. Definitely. I'll bring the stories we collected, she replied, her excitement bubbling over. We're going to make an impact, James. As he stepped away, she felt a mixture of hope and uncertainty. She had grown so much through this experience, but the world was still complicated and chaotic. The next day, Alina arrived at the community center where the forum was to be held, her heart pounding. The room was filled with people, some familiar faces and others new. Welcome, everyone, she said, her voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in her stomach. Thank you for being here today. We're not just here to discuss what happened to me, we're here to address the larger issues that affect us all. The audience listened intently as Alina shared her story, her voice rising and falling like a melody. Each word carried the weight of her experience, the pain of being marginalized, but also the strength she discovered within herself. As she spoke, she glanced over at Riley, who stood at the back, a proud smile on his face. After the forum, people mingled, exchanging stories and ideas. Alina felt a warmth spread through her as she witnessed strangers connecting over shared experiences. A woman approached her, tears in her eyes. Your story inspired me to share my own. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for sharing yours, Alina replied, her heart swelling with a sense of community. We need to support one another. As the event concluded, Alina found Riley near the exit, his expression one of quiet contemplation. How do you think it went? She asked, her heart racing with anticipation. Better than I hoped, he replied, his eyes reflecting a mix of admiration and determination. You were phenomenal, Alina. You have a gift. She smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. I couldn't have done it without your support. Riley shifted on his feet, a hint of vulnerability surfacing. I'm just a guy trying to do the right thing. You're the one who turned this into something bigger than either of us. As they stood there, surrounded by the fading light of the setting sun, Alina felt a shift in their dynamic. It was more than just a partnership, it was a connection built on mutual respect and shared goals. Hey, would you want to grab a coffee sometime? Riley asked, his voice low, almost hesitant. Are we talking work? Or, Alina teased, a playful smile on her lips. Both. He chuckled, scratching the back of his neck nervously. I mean, if you're interested. Definitely. I'd like that, she replied, her heart dancing with hope. As they walked out of the community center together, the sky painted in shades of pink and orange, Alina realized that the incident that had once shattered her sense of security had become a catalyst for something beautiful. Let's keep this going, she said, her voice filled with resolve. Let's continue to inspire change together. Riley nodded, determination etched on his face. We're just getting started. In the following months, Alina and Officer Riley became a formidable team, champions of change in their community. Their forums grew in size and scope, drawing attention from local media and eventually national outlets. Alina's story became a beacon of resilience, a testament to the power of empathy and the necessity of accountability. One afternoon, as they wrapped up another successful event, Alina and Riley found themselves walking along a nearby riverbank, the sun setting in a brilliant display of colors. Can you believe how far we've come? Alina mused, glancing at him with a smile. Not really, Riley replied, his eyes on the water, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. But I wouldn't trade this journey for anything. You've changed my perspective on so many things. She paused, searching his gaze. And you've changed mine. I always thought I had to fight alone, but you showed me the power of partnership. Riley turned to her, sincerity shining in his eyes. You're a leader, Alina. You've inspired so many people, including me. The air was thick with unspoken words, the moments stretching between them like a delicate thread. James, she began, her heart racing. Alina, Before he could finish, a loud splash interrupted them. A group of kids nearby had thrown rocks into the water, laughter echoing around them. They both burst into laughter, the tension dissipating like the ripples across the river's surface. Guess we'll have to save that conversation for later, Alina said, grinning. Yeah, it looks like the universe has other plans, he replied with a playful wink. As they walked back toward the bustling city, Alina felt a sense of hope for the future. The fight against discrimination was far from over, but she knew that with each step they took, they were creating a path toward understanding and compassion. And as evening fell, painting the world in hues of gold and indigo, Alina couldn't help but feel that their journey was just beginning. Together, they would continue to amplify the voices of those who had been silenced, pushing for change one story at a time. In that moment, surrounded by laughter and the promise of new beginnings, Alina knew that they were making history, not just for themselves, but for everyone who had ever felt unseen and unheard. As they walked into the future side by side, the world felt a little brighter, a little kinder, and full of endless possibilities.